My name's Elena Morales, born and raised in Rio Rancho, just north of Albuquerque. They blamed me for a crime I didn't commit. They packed my life into trash bags and sent me away like I was nothing. But they didn't know one thing: the girl they tried to bury wasn't broken, she was just getting started. Before we dive into this powerful story of betrayal, survival, and quiet revenge, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon, so you never miss the stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters. And stick around until the end, because sometimes the best revenge isn't loud, it's living better without them. This is my story. Growing up, everything in our house revolved around Diego. He was the sun, and the rest of us were just planets spinning in his orbit, too far to feel the warmth, but close enough to be burned if we got in his way. Mama used to say he was born under a lucky star. I never figured out if she actually believed that, or if it was just easier than admitting the truth. Diego didn't get lucky. He got away with everything. We lived in a stucco home with a red tile roof on the west side of Rio Rancho, where the sidewalks ended in desert sand and the sky stretched wide and unforgiving. It was quiet. Almost too quiet. People didn't yell in our neighborhood, they whispered behind blinds and smiled through their teeth. Inside our house, though, the rules bent around Diego. When he stole $20 from Papa's wallet, it was he probably needed it for school. When I came home 5 minutes late from tutoring, it was you're irresponsible, Elena. He crashed his bike into the neighbor's mailbox. The mailbox shouldn't have been so close to the curb. I dropped a plate. I was careless and needed to learn respect. At first, I thought I could earn what Diego had. I brought home straight A's, won a middle school science fair. Even got invited to a statewide writing competition. But all I got was a quick "that's nice, Mija," while Mama bragged about how Diego almost made varsity football his junior year. Almost. Diego was loud, charming, and full of excuses. He could lie through his teeth with a smile on his face and still have people handing him second chances. I used to watch him in awe, how he could wrap Mama and Papa around his finger with one shrug and a lopsided grin. I used to envy it. I used to want it, but envy turned into something else the older I got. Something colder. Something sharper. It wasn't just favoritism, it was blindness. Willful blindness. No matter how many times Diego messed up, they always found a way to protect him. And no matter how many times I tried to do the right thing, I was still the problem. Too quiet. Too serious. Too much. By the time I was 15, I stopped trying to be seen. I learned to live in the background, in the spaces between Diego's noise. I learned how to disappear in plain sight, something that would come in handy years later, when they pushed me out for good. But there was one moment I remember clearly. I was 13, and Diego had just come home drunk. Papa yelled for about 10 seconds before turning on the TV and ignoring it. Mama whispered to him in the hallway, "He's just stressed, Rafael. He's got so much pressure." I stood in the kitchen doorway. Unnoticed. That night, I wrote in my journal, "No one sees the shadow if they're too busy staring at the sun," and I've lived in that shadow ever since. It happened just after my 17th birthday, on one of those dry spring nights when the wind carries sand and the air feels heavy with things about to go wrong. Papa had left his work truck in the driveway, same as always, keys hanging on the kitchen hook. Ignition temperamental unless you tap the steering column just right. It was his pride, even if the paint was fading and the shocks were shot. He used it for job sites, hauling cement and tools across half of New Mexico. Diego wasn't even supposed to be home that night. He told Mama he was crashing at a friend's, which usually meant cheap beer and worse decisions. But I heard the door creak around midnight, heard his heavy boots stumbling through the hallway, the smell of tequila trailing behind him like smoke. Then came the engine. I stood at the window, watched the taillights veer into the street, crooked and uncertain. He didn't make it far. Half an hour later, red and blue lights flooded our cul-de-sac. A police cruiser, an ambulance, and a tow truck, all humming like angry bees. Papa's work truck had smashed into a power pole less than a mile away, front end wrapped around the wood like it had been begging for mercy. The passenger door was wide open. Whoever had driven it was long gone by the time the cops arrived. They knocked at our door around 2 a.m., and Diego? He was gone. Out the back. Left his jacket, his phone, everything. Just slipped into the night like a ghost who knew where all the exits were. I opened the door groggy, confused. The officer looked me over and asked, "Are you Elena Morales?" I nodded. "You're listed on the insurance as a driver. Were you behind the wheel tonight?" It was like falling into a hole I didn't see coming. I stammered, "No, I was asleep, I didn't." Mama appeared behind me, robe tied tight, face pale. "She took the truck without asking," she said, "too quick. She's been acting out." I turned to her, stunned. "What are you?" She must have panicked and ran. Papa cut in, stepping beside her. She was scared. Kids make mistakes. I looked from one face to the other, but neither would meet my eyes. That night, they handed me over. I was booked, fingerprinted, sat in a cold room under buzzing lights while some public defender told me to plead guilty. "It'll be easier this way." They found traces of alcohol in the cup holder. The breathalyzer came up clean, but that didn't matter. The damage was done. They called it joyriding. Property damage. Endangerment. No jail time, just community service, court fees, and a stain on my record that would follow me like a curse. And Diego? He reappeared 2 days later, eyes glassy and full of crocodile tears. "I don't remember anything," he said. "I was passed out at Luis's house all night." No one questioned it, and just like that, I became the villain in their story. I wore the nicest thing I had, a plain black skirt and a blouse I'd outgrown, stiff with starch and panic. My palms wouldn't stop sweating. Not because I was guilty, but because I already knew what was going to happen. This wasn't a trial. It was a performance, and I'd been cast as the villain before the curtain ever rose. The courtroom smelled like bleach and dust. The judge looked like he hadn't smiled in a decade. The public defender assigned to me barely glanced at my file, too busy checking his phone and muttering about keeping things clean and fast. I was a statistic to him. Another teenage mistake to be shuffled through the system. Mama sat on the left side of the gallery, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. Papa was beside her, arms crossed, jaw tight. And Diego, he wasn't even sitting with them. He stood near the back, head down, sunglasses still on. Coward. When the prosecutor asked my parents to testify, I thought, just for a second, maybe they'd change their minds. Maybe they'd remember I was their daughter. Maybe they'd tell the truth, but no. Papa stepped forward and said, "We tried our best to guide her. She's been acting out lately. We never thought it would go this far." Mama added, "She took the truck without permission. We were heartbroken. But we love her. We just want her to learn from this." I couldn't breathe. It was like watching my own parents throw dirt on my name and call it love. And Diego, he never looked up. Never took the stand. Never raised a hand or a voice or a single word in my defense. He let me drown so he could float. When it was my turn to speak, I stood there, voice shaking, and said, "I didn't take the truck. My brother did. He came home drunk that night. I saw him leave." The judge glanced over his glasses. "Your brother has an alibi. Are you saying your parents are lying?" "Yes," I whispered. The room went still. It didn't matter. The verdict came fast. Guilty. Misdemeanor joyriding. 100 hours of community service, $600 in fines, and a stern warning about taking responsibility. The sentence didn't sting as much as the silence. No one looked at me as I walked out. Not Mama. Not Papa. Not Diego. Outside, the sun burned hot against my face, but I felt cold. Like I'd been stripped of something I couldn't name. The next morning, I came home to find my bedroom packed up. Trash bags in the hallway. A one-way bus ticket to Santa Fe taped to the fridge with a note in Mama's handwriting. "It's time for you to figure things out on your own. No apology. No goodbye, just exile." And that's the moment I stopped being their daughter. That's the moment I started surviving. When I stepped off the curb and opened our front door, I knew the house was too quiet. Not the normal, TV humming, dishwasher running kind of quiet. This was the kind of silence that swallowed your footsteps. The kind that meant something was gone, and not just furniture, The first thing I saw was the trash bags. 3 of them, black and bloated, lined up like corpses in the hallway outside my bedroom door. My backpack was slumped on top of one, the zipper half open, my books spilling out like they'd been tossed without care. I stood there for a second, frozen. Then Mama stepped out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel like this was just another Tuesday. "I packed up your things," she said, not meeting my eyes. I swallowed hard. "What is this?" She sighed, like she was the one exhausted. "You need to go, Elena. Things have gotten tense. Your father's upset. Diego's still shaken. We just need space." "Space?" My voice cracked. "You mean, after everything you did, you're kicking me out?" "We're giving you a chance," she said quickly, like it was a gift I should thank her for. "A fresh start." Then she handed me an envelope. Inside was a one-way bus ticket to Santa Fe, leaving in 3 hours, and $72 in cash. I stared at it. "That's it?" "It's more than we had when we started out," she said, as if this was some kind of noble rite of passage. "You'll be fine. You're smart." I laughed, a short, sharp, bitter sound. "You let me take the fall for Diego. You lied to a judge. You watched me stand there alone. And now you're just... what? Washing your hands of me?" Her lips tightened. "You've made your choices." "No," I said, stepping back. "You did." I didn't cry. I thought I might. But my tears had already been spent, in the courtroom. In the back of the police cruiser, in the holding cell where I sat alone for 6 hours, what was left now was colder. Sharper. I picked up the bags, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and walked to the door. Mama didn't follow. As I stepped out into the glaring afternoon sun, I paused. I turned back, just once, to look at the house I'd grown up in, the crooked wind chimes, the chipped stucco, the sagging porch where we used to carve pumpkins. It all looked smaller now. Like a stage after the play ends, I walked to the bus stop with my bags in one hand and the envelope in the other. I didn't know where I was going to sleep. I didn't know how I'd eat. But I knew one thing, I was never coming back. They'd buried me with lies and tossed me to the wind, and one day, they were going to regret it. Santa Fe looked prettier on postcards. When my bus pulled into the station, the sky was a canvas of soft orange and pale pink, the adobe buildings glowing under the last light of day. But beauty doesn't feed you. It doesn't keep you warm at night. And it sure as hell doesn't ask if you've got anywhere to go. I didn't. The first few nights I slept in a laundromat. It was open 24 hours, and the old woman working nights didn't say much as long as I pretended to read a magazine and didn't bother the customers. I'd curl up in the corner next to the dryers, using my backpack as a pillow and my hoodie as a blanket. I was cold. Always cold. My $72 didn't last long. A couple cheap sandwiches, a pair of bus rides, and a prepaid phone card so I could check job listings from a borrowed library computer. The rest vanished in a blink. I applied anywhere that had a help wanted sign: diners, gas stations, janitorial services. I finally got a break from a woman named Rosa, who ran a small commercial cleaning crew. She handed me a mop and said, "You start tonight." I scrubbed floors in strip malls, mopped up movie theater vomit, and cleaned toilets that looked like crime scenes. It paid barely enough, but it was cash, and I wasn't sleeping on cold tile anymore. After 2 weeks, Rosa let me sleep in the storage closet of her cleaning supply warehouse. No windows, no heat, but it locked from the inside and didn't smell like bleach, most of the time. I'd wake up at 4 a.m., wash my face in the utility sink, and walk 6 blocks to the library when it opened. There, I started something I hadn't done in a long time: studying, GED prep books, typing courses, basic coding lessons, anything free that could make me smarter, sharper, harder to knock down. I took notes like my life depended on it, because it did. No one saw me. Not really. I was just another quiet girl in a dirty hoodie, head down, moving through the world like a ghost. But I saw them, every business owner, every tired worker, every distracted college student sipping overpriced coffee. They didn't know it, but I was learning from all of them. I had nothing. No family. No safety net. But I had time. I had rage. I had fire. I kept telling myself, they thought they threw me away. But I'm going to make that the biggest mistake they ever made. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, still cold under 3 layers. But there were mornings when I looked in the mirror and saw something new in my eyes, something like steel. I was sleeping on concrete and scrubbing floors for change, but I was building, and one day, I was going to rise so high, they'd choke on their guilt just trying to look up at me. It started with a flyer. I was wiping down a coffee shop counter one morning, part of Rosa's rotating contracts, when I saw a printout taped near the community board. Freelancer needed, website help. Will pay. Just a phone number, handwritten in Sharpie, underlined twice. I stared at it for a full minute, mop in hand, heart thudding. I'd been taking free coding courses online for months, HTML, CSS, the basics of WordPress. Nothing fancy. But I knew enough. Maybe, that night, I used the library's landline to call. The voice on the other end belonged to a small business owner named Lena Gutierrez, who sold homemade herbal soaps and candles from her garage. She didn't want anything complicated, just a page that made her look less like a grandma with a folding table and more like a brand. I offered to build it for $50. 3 days later, she handed me $100, because you didn't talk down to me, she said. You listened. That's when I realized something. I didn't need a formal education or a resume full of lies. I needed skills, and I needed to find people who saw value in someone who could show up, shut up, and do the work. So I did. I printed business cards at the library, just a name, Elena M. Digital Support, and a Gmail address. I slipped them into bulletin boards, under shop doors, into tip jars. I offered to fix menus, edit social media bios, set up online booking links. I charged just enough to stay alive, and people started calling. Rosa let me use her break room to take calls between shifts. I'd change out of my cleaning clothes and hop on Zoom calls in a borrowed blouse. Half the time, I was winging it. Googling answers, watching tutorials, reading documentation like it was scripture, but it worked. Word spread. One soap maker led to a jewelry seller. A taco truck needed online ordering. A yoga instructor wanted a newsletter. I built a tiny roster of micro clients, none of them big names, but all of them real, and with every client, I felt something come back to me, a sense of worth. Of control. Like for the first time in my life, I was the one writing the script, not begging for lines in someone else's play. 6 months in, I filed paperwork for an LLC. Fireroot Digital, named for the way plants still bloom in scorched soil. Like me, I moved into a rented room with a desk and decent Wi-Fi. I started turning down cleaning jobs. Rosa hugged me the day I told her. Don't forget who you are, she said. I won't. Because I remember every night I shivered on a tile floor. Every lie my family told to save their golden son. Every ounce of pain they handed me, and I turned it into something sharp, something bright. They abandoned me in the ashes, but they didn't realize I was the fire. I hadn't heard the name Diego out loud in years, not in texts. Not in emails. Not even whispered in my own thoughts. I buried it deep, the way you do with something that used to hurt too much to touch, but then the phone rang. It was late, after 10. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing a new client's branding kit, when my phone buzzed with an unknown 505 number. New Mexico. I almost ignored it, assuming it was spam or someone asking for a quote they'd never follow through on. But something in my chest tightened. I answered, "Hello?" There was a pause. A breath. And then, "Elena?" The voice was lower than I remembered. Scratchier. But it was him. Diego. My hand gripped the phone like it might fall. What do you want? He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding it for years. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. But it's about Papa. He's sick. I didn't say anything. My brain started turning, slow and suspicious. He's got liver failure. They found it too late, he continued. He's on a waiting list, but the hospital bills are already. They're too much. Still, I stayed quiet, and the house. He added, they're foreclosing on it next month. Mama's doing what she can, but. Let me guess, I cut in, voice flat. You need money. Silence again. It said more than his words. Elena, he said finally, I know we messed up. What happened back then? It wasn't right. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't know how. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so pathetic. You didn't know how? You watched me go to court for you. You stood there and did nothing. And now, what, because you're desperate, I'm family again? Elena, please. I could hear the panic rising in his throat. The golden boy wasn't golden anymore. I stood, walked to the window, stared out over the Santa Fe lights. My reflection looked calm, but my heart was a storm. I built everything from nothing, I said. While you were getting drunk and dodging consequences, I was sleeping on floors. I earned every inch of my life back. I know, he said softly. That's why I came to you. That stung more than I wanted to admit. Not because he needed me, but because he finally saw me. And I hated that it took his own ruin to make that happen. I paused. Took a breath. I'll meet you tomorrow, I said. Downtown. Café Luna. 10 a.m., really? He sounded stunned. Thank you. I mean it, Elena, thank you. I hung up before he could say more. I didn't agree to help. I agreed to look him in the eye, because the girl he abandoned didn't exist anymore, and the woman he'd see tomorrow, she didn't forgive easily. Café Luna was quiet when I got there, still early, still cool, the sun just beginning to stretch over the dusty rooftops of downtown Santa Fe. I chose a table near the back, where I could see the front door, where the shadows were long and soft, and where I wouldn't be overheard. I ordered a coffee. Black. No sugar, and I waited. Diego showed up 5 minutes late, wearing a wrinkled flannel and boots scuffed down to the sole. His hair was longer, darker at the roots, and his eyes had that hollow kind of tired people get when they've run out of excuses. Elena, he said with a small, breathless smile, like he expected warmth. I didn't offer it. I nodded at the chair across from me. Sit. He did, folding his hands like he was in church. You look good. Different. You look the same, I replied flatly. Just a little emptier. He winced but said nothing. I let the silence sit. I wanted him to stew in it. Finally, he leaned in. Look, I know I don't deserve anything. But I came because I'm trying. I don't care about me, this is for Mama, for Papa. They're losing everything. They lost me first, I said quietly. And didn't blink. His mouth opened, then closed. He looked down. You're right. Let me remind you what you took, I said, leaning in. You took my name. You let them shame me in court. You watched them throw me out like trash. While you got to stay the golden boy, I was sleeping on concrete. Cleaning toilets to eat. Working 2 jobs while they erased me. I didn't know how to fix it, he whispered. No, I snapped. You didn't want to. You were scared it'd cost you something. And now that it has. Suddenly I'm worth calling. He rubbed his hands together like he was trying to pray. Elena. Please. I reached into my bag, his eyes flickered, maybe with hope, maybe with shame. I pulled out a white envelope and slid it across the table. Here, I said. This is for everything. He blinked. What is it? Open it. Inside was a single check, $1. Written in thick black ink. Signed, Elena Morales. He stared at it for a long time, confused, then he looked up, and I saw it click. It's what you gave me, I said. A bus ticket and a lie. So I'm giving it back, one worthless gesture. One empty promise. That's what you're worth to me now. His lips parted, like he might cry. I stood before he could. That's all you get. No forgiveness. No help. No closure. Just the same silence you gave me. I left him there, alone, broke, still clutching the check like it might change something, but I didn't look back, because revenge doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes, it comes quiet, written in ink, and sealed with a smile. I didn't watch him leave the cafe. I didn't care where he went, if he walked back to that broken house, or sat there until the sun burned through whatever scraps of pride he had left. I'd already carried too much of Diego's weight in my life. Now, I was done. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Not joy. Not relief. Just the quiet kind of peace that comes when you finally put something down that was never yours to carry in the first place. They never said sorry. Not Mama. Not Papa. Not Diego, and for the longest time, that's what I wanted more than anything: a real apology. A moment where one of them would look me in the eye and say, "You were right. We failed you," but they never did, so I stopped waiting for justice, and I built something stronger. I got my GED. I launched a business from nothing. I made connections. I built friendships with people who saw my worth without needing blood ties. People who didn't just take. I met clients who believed in me, mentors who pushed me, and friends who stayed even when things got hard. That's what family is supposed to be. I moved into a studio with tall windows and a view of the city lights. I filled the space with books, plants, and silence I could finally enjoy. Not the silence of being ignored, but the kind that comes after surviving a storm. Sometimes I'd still wake up with that tightness in my chest, memories of the courtroom, the cold tile floor and that laundromat, the way Mama looked away when I begged her to tell the truth. But those memories didn't break me anymore, they built me. People talk about revenge like it's this big, dramatic explosion, yelling, courtroom confessions, flames. But that's not always how it comes. Sometimes, revenge is quiet. Sometimes, it's becoming everything they said you couldn't be. It's rising so far above the ashes they left you in. They choke on your name when they hear it in a headline. It's being the kind of woman who never needed their approval, only her own. I haven't been back to Rio Rancho. I don't think I ever will. That old house might still be there, with its chipped paint and crooked wind chimes. Maybe Mama still waters the roses out front, pretending nothing ever went wrong. Let her, because the girl they buried in lies didn't just survive, she thrived. I walk with my head high now. I speak clearly. I know what I've earned. And when people ask me how I did it, how I built something from nothing, I smile and tell them the truth. My family abandoned me. But it made me stronger, and I wouldn't trade that strength for anything, not even their love. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever felt abandoned, overlooked, or had to build yourself from the ashes, don't leave without hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, emotional stories like this one. And if you've ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to protect you, drop a comment below. Your voice matters here. Thanks for watching. Stay strong. Stay standing.